All righty, we'll get started here. Good morning, everybody. Here we are. Yeah, that sounds good. All right, we're rolling here. Well, what we've been doing, as you're very much aware, I'm sure, we've been looking now at the latter portion of Jacob's life in terms of and through this idea of photographs, photos, snapshots, I'm calling them. And because the story is now in the text, the predominant storyline is the story of Joseph. Jacob appears here and there, and while he does, we're looking at these occasions in his life as snapshots. So we're now on week 2 of snapshot 4, and we'll wrap snapshot 4 up today. And a lot of this, we'll just look at some reviews. So I came across this, we'll go ahead and just do this here. That's my hand there. That's actually after I have a whole lot of coffee in the morning.
Nicely done.
Yeah. I've been playing around with this software, so anyway, I thought that was kind of fun. So what we've been looking at is in snapshot 4. This is snapshot 4, and what we discovered last week, snapshot 4 is now Jacob in the wagon, not on the wagon, but in the wagon. He's in the wagon that his son Joseph has supplied. Remember, the wagon is not from these parts, so the wagon is designed to take Jacob to someplace new, someplace different. And of course, we're making correlations with this journey in our lives. And but I'm calling this now. He's not in control. He has no reins. There's some means outside of the photograph that is actually pulling the wagon. That we'll leave that. We'll leave that up to you. Depends on your theological position on whatever that is, but who is pulling the wagon. So, but what we're looking at it, we're calling it Jacob's second journey, and the second journey is this idea that he was called out as a young man to go out on this mission to Haran to live his life. God assured him that there was purpose and there's meaning, and then later on in life, he's at that other location. He's called yet a second time to return back to the land again, and you'd think that mission accomplished, fulfilled, and life happily ever after. But the story goes, the narrative is that now late in his life, I calculated out and based on. Who knows if this is right? He's 130 years old here. 130 years old. He died when he was 147, according to Genesis 49, and he lived 17 years in Egypt. So I'm kind of calculating back, pretty easy math for me, and he's about 130 years old here. But yet, what we're doing is saying, well, his experience is not uncommon, because I pointed out last week that this kind of an enigmatic prophetic statement from Jesus to Peter late in his life out of John 21. When you were young, Peter, you pretty much did whatever you want to do. We can relate to that. But now when you're old, you're going to be taken to places. Your hands will be outstretched and taken to places that you don't want to go. There was a latter journey. And then I spent a fair amount of time last week talking about Odysseus' second journey out of the Odyssey, which is an epic story. This probably the story that all Western civilization stories are based on. It's a great storyline. 700 BC, Homer wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, and interesting, Odysseus' journey, he had a second journey as well. So I'm just kind of captured by this idea. I haven't drawn any conclusions, but that's what we're talking about, the second journey of Jacob. So, the question then on the table this morning is, gee, what can we learn about this second journey? We kind of introduced the idea last week, but gee, as we kind of drill down into it, what can we learn? And that's what this morning is all about. And again, I know you can't read the text, but the only reason I show this is that it proves that I do look at the Bible. I actually spend time in the text. Even I'm sure you guys kind of wonder that. Where in the world is he thinking here? But no, I do. I spend a fair amount. I love it. I really do. I love looking at. I love correlation. I just love what's the big idea here, and it's something that captures me. You've seen these two columns in weeks past, and then I just correlated the third column. And I'm not going to comment on this because I have some summary slides that you can read. But this is just to show that there are three callings. I would probably put 4 in there, but there are 3 locations and times in Jacob's life where he is visited by God Almighty in the form of a dream or verbal communication. An altar is set up and there is worship. The first 2 is at Bethel, when he departs in Genesis 28, when God says, now go out, and then the return to the land 25 plus years later in Bethel, same location. Remember, he renamed it El Bethel, God, the God of Bethel, and at Bethel. And now at a different location, but very much in correlation to this, God speaks to him at Beersheba, which is south, as he's exiting out the south of Israel on his way to Egypt, the same idea. So there's 1, 2, 3 times that God speaks to him and gives to him the promise. And we're familiar with the promise. The promise to Abraham, God's going to do something to you, to do something through you. It's the same promise here. It is the same promise. So what I've got drawn here is a summary of that slide, the next 2 slides. The primary call, the primary message in Genesis 28 is, as Jacob is a younger man, probably in his 40s, go. You need to go to the place that I will show you. Genesis 35, 10 through 12. Now is on the return. Actually, that is when he's in Haran and called to return. No, that's once he gets back to Bethel. But the message here is that he has returned and he's going to fulfill the promise. Go and return. And then, and now in Genesis 46, 1 through 7, I've coined this term, allow yourself to be taken. Allow yourself to be taken. He's 130 years old. I'm going to provide a way. Go ahead and go to Egypt, and I will make for you a great nation. I will make you into a great nation in Egypt. And that is what's so different. There are 4 pieces to this promise, same as the Abrahamic promise. It is the Abrahamic promise. There's a place, there's a people, there's a purpose, and there's a presence. All those are on that previous slide. The place is the land of Canaan, guys. God is going to give you a land. I'm going to give you a land. It is very clear. There is a people, a great nation. Out of you, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, I will birth a great nation that will be a blessing to all the nations. That is the promise. Through Abraham, Isaac, to the patriarchs, the patriarchal promise. People, a great nation, a blessing to all the nations. And during the course of this mission, I will be with you. It's very clear, okay? But what is interesting in this whole thing, there are as this overall overarching promise as we compare chapter 46, 1 through 7, there's one thing missing. And here I'm showing it. The commonalities of the 3 texts are There's a promised purpose, there's a promised people, and there's a promised presence. Very clear. If we look at 46, 1 through 7, we'd see those three in there. Over here, the difference in 46, 1 through 7, here's the difference. The where has changed. The where. The where is now Egypt. The where has not changed. It's still Canaan. It's still Israel. But Jacob's where is going to change. I'm going to send you to someplace new, and I'm going to fulfill this promise at a very unlikely location. It's still on, but I'm asking you to go to Egypt, which is, wow, that just blows our minds. And so in the third calling, note the promised place is the same. Because he says in verse 7, I'm going to return you back. Of course, he's going to be dead. His remains will be returned back. But in God's frame of reference, this promise is still on. But Jacob is now being instructed to leave the promised place with the promise of a second return. Okay, why are we talking about this? All right, so here is why. Here is why. We think of purpose. We're going to think about yourself, think about how you have been instructed as a Christian believer within a context, and I think this is probably, I'm making a blanket statement that this is how we have been taught to think. And we've been taught, this is how we naturally think, and I don't know your background, but at least from an evangelical type of background, this is where I think we would all land. This is how we think. That early in life, we receive a go. A go. Forget the retire there for a minute. We go, and in obedience, we go. We go, whatever we think go is. For some of you, you were involved in parachurch organizations. Parachurch organizations were really popular when we were younger. And who doesn't want to do things for God? When we come to an understanding of what God through Christ has done for us, who wouldn't want to give their life for something? And it's great. But then we think that we go out on a mission. We're out on a mission, and we fulfill our mission, hopefully, out somewhere else, usually, aware that somewhere else. And then later on, for whatever circumstances, either we're getting too old or God's call has changed, or whatever, we return. We get a call to return back. Now that is very clear with what we've been reading as far as the story. The going out and the returning back. And then what we have to look forward to is we experience the promises of God. So the whole thing here is that we want to go out and do stuff for God, and as a result, we receive the promises of God. And I call it here retire. We retire. We go out, we do our thing, we do our work in tandem and in a relationship with God, and then we return. Now that's a very simplistic view of how we think, and it may not be on target with all of us here, but I know people, I can think of people right now who have been really damaged by this kind of thought. Because what happens as a young person, you go out with full intention, all that, and all of a sudden something changes, and you come back on an airplane, I know one fellow who was actually he was going to be the family priest. In a strong Catholic tradition, there's always one man who's going to be the priest of the family. He's the one that goes off to school and seminary and becomes a priest. Well, my friend Dennis was going to do that, but he couldn't deal with the whole thing of celibacy. You know, he fell in love. And what do you do with your mission for God if you fall in love with a wonderful woman? You know, I have no doubt that he worked with the whole thing of not fulfilling his mission. Thus, what promises are there for me? We talk about grace. We believe in grace, but God, there's a reality that if we think we are staged to do great things for God, and then we go out on a mission and we don't fulfill that, what we thought we should be doing, there's some issues that we've got to work through. Now, I think they're on our side, not on God's side, but they're still there. So mission accomplished, and we come back and we retire. I'm stating that that's the filters that we read the story of Jacob through. That he was called to go out as a young man. He's then instructed by God to return to the land. He goes to Bethel, he worships, and I think if I were in his sandals, I would be thinking, oh, I've gone out, I've done whatever God has asked me to do, and now I'm going to receive this promise of a land. And we just settle down and live happily ever after. That is where this is. But that is not what we see. And Jacob is not the only story. It's a common piece of this idea of the second journey. So what we see happening here is he's gone out. We know that. He has returned back. Mission accomplished. He's done everything that God has asked him to do. But now this second journey, be taken. Allow yourself to be taken. There is no retirement in his life. There is no retirement living there. Imagine packing up all your belongings at 130 years old and in a wagon, in wagons, there's no air flight, nothing of comfort. And he's asked to be taken to guys, that's a big deal. Yeah, Bill.
Egypt is a place you're not supposed to go.
You're right. Yeah.
He said, don't go down to Egypt. That message came over and over again to him and his dad and his dad's dad. That if they did go to Egypt, they got back out. You know?
What would be a modern correlation of that message? Go where? Iran. Yes, Iran. And I will make you, there you go, that's an accurate correlation. Yeah, Iran, and I will make you a great nation there. You know, God, that's...
No, let's go here and be a great nation, but oops, I'm sorry, now the last plan is I'm sending you to Iran, you're going to die there.
Yeah.
And what?
Well, but I'm going to bring you back.
Your bones.
Yeah, your bones.
Verse 4.
And somehow that doesn't give you, what's that?
Verse 4 is very important.
What's verse 4?
The center of verse 4 says, I will surely bring you back.
I will surely, yeah.
It's a promise.
It's a promise. Yeah, it's not over, but it's way different. It's not over, but it's different, yes.
The way this overlays the Great Commission.
In what way?
Well, it says, go into all the world, make disciples of nations. You lead, into the world is out of Jerusalem. Into the world was a dangerous place. But the most important last piece of that message was, and behold, I will be with you. I will be with you. And that being with you is a huge thing. And the idea of coming back, the idea of the resurrection, the redemption, the end of the age was implicit in that. So you will come back into the whole world. I mean, it's not like locations become secondary now because the world's your territory. But it's sort of, there's a lot of overlays on the Great Commission here.
Yeah, I hadn't made that connection, Bill, but I do see what you're saying.
Because the most important thing God said to him here, I'll be with you.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm going to be with you. And after he said to us, we go, I'll be with you. That's a huge piece of the puzzle we don't dare cut out.
Yeah. That's good. Alrighty. Well, so the conclusion that I'm making here is there's a different framework for understanding this idea of our purpose, an idea of mission. I know that we have, I know you know that. I know that we've thought that. Probably most men in this room at one point say, I'm going to do great things for God. And who wouldn't want to? I mean, that's natural, given we're out of gratefulness. And, after what he's done for us, to give our life for him. But there is more to the story. An old man, 130 years old, who has been living under this core promise, not a generational promise, and now at 130 years old, he's asked to go to Egypt. That just is, that's mind-boggling. But in the framework of God, in the economy of God, it is, it's normal. And what we see in other story is normal. There's a second journey. So I'd like you guys to we got 10 minutes here. Well, we got 15 minutes, but I'd like for 10 minutes, I'd like you guys to just sit around like the four in a group, or 6, 5, just wherever you can get around. And then think about this in relation to, your life. In what ways can you relate at this stage in your life? In what way can you relate to this idea of being taken to a different place? And please note, I'm not talking primarily of a geographic, that's a picture. But a different place. Where are you today in relation to where you thought you would be? Where is your where? Being taken to a place different than you expected. And then think of that, and if it's not true, if you're exactly where you thought you would end up, you're a very rare man. But if that's the case, that's the case. But if you are in somewhat of a different place, what are your thoughts in regard? What are your thoughts in regard to this? Was it my own stupidity, or was it God's wonderful grace, and I can now see a little bit more clearly? But I'd like for you to just spend the rest of the time, I'll give you 10 minutes, and just talk about these two questions, and relate this idea of being taken on a second journey, and then we'll get back together and wrap up. So.